Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. Are you a tenured professor who's wondering, is this it? After years of climbing the academic ladder, many scholars finally get tenure only to discover that the promised land is, well, not so promising. That's exactly what happened to my guest, Dr. Lisa Anthony, a tenured professor in computer science who realized that academia wasn't offering the fulfillment she craved. However, instead of staying stuck, Lisa started a side hustle in academic editing and coaching. She was a bit reluctant at first because she was nervous about the whole idea of starting a business, but she's since found that it has reignited her passion, creativity, and even her energy for her day job as faculty. In this episode, Lisa shares how she went from resisting business to launching a coaching program and loving, what? Yes, loving the marketing process along the way. If you've ever thought, I want to do something more, but I don't know what, this conversation is for you. Here's my interview with Lisa. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Paulina. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. You are a member of our Becoming an Academic Editor community. I think you joined the January cohort.
That's right. I did.
Yeah, so it's been about 7 months now since you started. And we're going to talk today about your work in academia and your side hustle of being an editor and a coach. Mm-hmm. And what you've thought of the process of getting into starting a business and all of that. So why don't we start at the beginning? What do you do in academia?
Well, I'm a professor, associate professor in computer science at the University of Florida.
Go Gators.
And yes, go Gators. As an alum yourself, you're familiar with the blue and orange in the blood. So I work there. I've been there since 2013, so I guess 12 years now. And my research area is specifically human-computer interaction. So I teach classes in how people understand technology and how we can design it to work better for what they expect.
And so tell us about what is your side hustle? What is the business that you have started to build and that is growing?
So the academic editing side hustle started as a very small twinkle in my eye during COVID. And I think I saw your specific post coming through my feed on Facebook, perhaps because we had the Gator thing in common. I know I saw your post twice about becoming an academic editor before I jumped on it, but I also had talked to other faculty members about looking for something to bring a little energy into my day. Writing had always been my favorite part of what I was doing. Besides working with students, I liked crafting the stories in the papers. And I thought, why don't I see if I can do that more often on the side and enjoy that piece, bring some joy back into my day.
So during COVID, was it that you weren't teaching or you were just teaching online and you missed that kind of interaction, or what got you thinking about? editing and actually starting a business for it?
So I definitely did not want to start a business. In fact, when you started the cohort and there was a lot about the business, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this was not what I thought I
What
wanted to
have I
do.
done?
Right? I never wanted to run a business. I just want to do the cool stuff that's the work. Like I wanted to focus on the work and not all the logistics and the selling and the marketing and the whatever, pricing and negotiating. And I had a lot of preconceived notions about what that would feel like. So during COVID specifically, we all experienced the lockdowns, the changes in our work practices overnight. And many different places came back differently from that, right? And how they brought us back and what the policies were varied a lot. So I won't say more than that because I'm here to talk about my side hustle. But it was frustrating to be in a situation where I felt like I didn't have a lot of power to help make my daily life and that of my students better. So joined a bunch of I joined the faculty senate. I was elected. I joined the engineering faculty council as part of that and thought, okay, here's my opportunity to be part of the movers and the shakers in the community. And I did not find that. I did not find that. I found a lot of people who really cared. I found a lot of people who really wanted to make a difference. And I didn't see it making a difference. And that was very frustrating to me. So I think for a long time, I saw a community in academia at my department, in my university, and COVID really ripped that up. COVID really destroyed that. It didn't, it didn't survive that. And when we came back, as we were coming back, it was not the same level of engagement and even that it was before, which for me was low. So to flip to the second half of the story for a second, a big reason I was afraid of doing a business or running a business was because of that seeking of a community, right? If I'm saying one of the things I miss in academia is the community of working with like-minded people, not only always being the one in charge of all the meetings because I'm the only faculty member there, that working in a business on my own felt like I was just going to be doing that again. So when we started talking in the cohort about other approaches, a broader range of options like coaching, developmental editing, and running workshops and traveling to do courses, that's when I started to see, okay, I would still be interacting with people and not just sitting in my office by myself, which for some people, that's what they wanted. It's not really what I want.
That's interesting. You said that you had preconceived notions about business. Was it just the fear of being isolated, or were there other things that made you nervous about the idea of starting a business?
Well, I suppose one of the main obvious ones that a lot of people probably share is feeling like completely unprepared to run a business, right? I was never trained for that. I felt like there was a whole world of the universe of business and marketing and social media and influencing that I knew felt like a can of worms that I had not even cracked open. And so I just had this idea of how much I would have to spend energy on that. And
Figuring
then,
it out and
yeah, figuring it out. And okay, and the thing I wanted to say, we weren't trained for running a business, but then again, we weren't trained for a lot of things we do in academia. So when I started thinking that way, I said, you know what? I am a successful woman of a certain age. I'm a tenured professor at an R1 university. I think I can decide what I spend my time on, meaning I can have that confidence to say, if this is something I want to tackle, why not? So that's kind of what I think pushed me over the edge. The fact that I saw your post come through a second, maybe even a third time, right at a moment that I was having a transition at work, I jumped on it. So I honestly, best decision I ever made. And I want to tell your podcast listeners how funny it is. I still enjoy the writing and working with the clients, but I've been really enjoying getting the marketing stuff together. And I think organizing and doing all that logistics is also something I really enjoy and didn't kind of expect to.
I love to hear that. To hear you say that you love marketing now
I
is
know,
just so
right?
great. And I think it's important though, because it speaks to this idea that I've been playing with for a while, and I think I'm actually going to write a book about it. And it is that we who struggle in academia, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think that when I started this program, I expected it to fill with people who were coming out of grad school and couldn't get a job, or
Mm,
people who had been adjuncts for years and were unhappy, understandably.
right.
And what has happened is we do have a mix of those folks, but I would say about half, if not more, are people like you who have gotten tenure. And it's like you spent years working for this holy grail of tenure,
Hmm.
and you get there and you're like, okay, what now? Like
Right.
this isn't
Right.
the promised land that I
Right.
expected.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have experienced that, where they get to tenure and they realize it's either just more of the same, like overwork
Hmm.
and burnout, or it's just not as fulfilling. And what I'm hearing you say is that you have a lot of creativity and ideas and excitement and passion, and you weren't finding the outlets in the traditional institution. You weren't
Right.
finding outlets for that. And the marketing and the creating the website and the coming up with ideas for workshops and stuff, that has been an outlet, or those have been outlets for you.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about tenure and changing expectations. I think I had been doing the same thing for about 10 years at this point, and 6 or 7 after getting tenure. And then what do I want to do with the rest of my career? That's a time when people often reinvent themselves, but there wasn't a place. I didn't, feel like there was a logical place for me to build that. So I thought when I got tenure, I would have proved myself, and then my department colleagues would maybe want to work with me, And I mean, I say that a little bluntly, but what I mean is in my department, and maybe lots of academic departments, you're really not encouraged to collaborate inside your discipline, even though, especially in computing, there's such a wide range of what people are working on. Like a networking person really isn't going to have a lot in common with someone working in computer science education. They may be able to talk about it, but they could actually develop a really interesting collaborative project in between their space. And I just don't find that to be the model that's pursued or accepted or encouraged where I am. The other thing I also really want to recommend for your podcast listeners, if they haven't heard of this or read this, because you mentioned people just coming out of academia or out of grad school, it's called the 7-Year Postdoc, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Tenure Clock. Have you read this article?
No.
Um, I can't remember when it was published, maybe just before or a few years before I started my academic job. And basically the author, which I should have looked up, but the author talks about how having a job for 7 years where you're not going to lose a job, minus unforeseen force de majeure kind of things, that's a very rare occurrence in any discipline, in any industry. And to really take that chance to grow as yourself and to not worry so much about that end goal, but about what the safety of tenure can provide. And I think I did that. I took risks. I expanded my collaborative network. But it was like everyone was so overwhelmed that they couldn't reach back, right? So I was leading a lot of those efforts, and it was exhausting. So I think it's important from that article, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Tenure Clock, was that your pre-tenure habits determine your post-tenure habits. That's what they say. We all have this idea that you're gonna get tenure and then you can relax. But as you say, the demands stay the same and they actually increase. Every time you get promoted in academia, from grad school to your job, from your job getting assistant to associate, you have new things to do that you didn't know how to do before. And that's what's hard about it, right? Suddenly learning all those new things. And so I think that you find maybe you didn't like those new things, right? And that's kind of where I felt I landed, as well as you should pay attention to the institution too, right? The pre-tenure habits of you determine your post-tenure habits, but so do the institutions. And I think that was something I didn't really pay attention to. I believed a lot of after tenure, you have a lot more freedom and you can do what you want. And this is your chance to become nationally known. And I didn't really see that pathway being supported. It was something you had to really build it brick by brick. And if I'm going to do that, I'd rather do it on tasks I truly love, like this side hustle.
I think you just made a really interesting point about how the bar or the expectations change in each phase of your career. And I know for me, and I'm sure for many people, we go into grad school thinking that we have this passion for research and writing and collaboration and all of that. And you finally finish your PhD and you land your tenure track job. And all of a sudden they're talking about committee service and advising and, supervising theses. And I remember showing up to my first job and they were talking about committees. And I was like, what's a committee? I mean, I know what a committee is, but what do you mean? What do they do here?
Yeah, what is this? We have committees in the department. Yeah, as a student, nobody. You're really shielded from a lot of that. Nobody
in the 7 years or whatever I spent in grad school, 6 years.
Oh gosh.
Nobody mentioned that this was a thing that faculty had to do,
Yeah.
And so, I feel like, you finish your PhD and pour yourself into this project to get to this goalpost, and then you get there and all of a sudden the game changes. And I didn't get to tenure because I left before that, but I was close, but I didn't stay to try to apply. And then it sounds like, you get tenure, but then the goalpost and the expectations change again. And you have this new set of tasks on your plate.
Right.
So, I think also speaks to our ability as faculty and as scholars to rewire our brains and to learn these new things, that we're just served up this task saying, here, do this thing. And you're like, I don't know how to do this, but you figure it out because you're a researcher and you're a writer and you know exactly what you have to do to figure it out, which is exactly what you do in business, right? You have to bring in clients and you figure it out, right? I give you the tools in the course and the menu of options to choose from, but you have to decide which of those you like the best, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or cold emails or whatever.
Right.
So having gone through this process, coming back to that question about the preconceived notions about business, if you were talking to somebody who felt like you did about, I don't know how to start a business, or I don't want to have to do all these businessy things, what would you tell them now?
So I would try to reframe it. I would ask them, what types of activities do they like to do? Now, this is a story from the dawn of time. I was in middle school, and I don't know if you had to do this, but I had to, and a lot of other people I've met have had to do this. It was a sort of career interests test, and it had a list of a bazillion types of activities: organizing files, building electronics. It had so many different things, and the point was for you to say what level of interest you had in all of these different things, and then at the end it would tell you some types of careers that you might consider because of your interests. Well, I graduated eventually as valedictorian of my high school class. The thing that my middle school assessment came back with was that I was really, really into organizing and logistics, and I would make it a great administrative assistant. My mom was not too pleased because she's thinking, well, these tests obviously are, maybe limiting what you're considering. But I always thought about that and how, I really do like organizing things. And I think that is part of the problem solving nature of what you're getting at. The idea of taking a messy set of things, whether it be data or files or emails or, workflows, and organizing it into something that makes sense and works. And that part I really like. So I would probably start with that. The other thing I would do is suggest that they check out Maria Bayer's Irresistible Selling videos. That you had her come and give us a seminar, and her discussion of how to make selling not feel like selling resonated with me so much. I also realized she was using those techniques on us, and it worked. But she made the really good point, which is that if you are doing it in a way that's authentic, it feels natural. So all of the things that are sort of happening are coming together at the right time, organically. It's not that I strategically decided to get on your podcast this week, which happens to be the week that my blog post about Modern Figures podcast went out, which is a really great podcast about Black women in computing. And buzz has been building on my editing side when you highlighted me, and that went around LinkedIn. So it's not that I said, oh, Paulina, if you highlight me and I'll get this many, inquiries. In some ways, I've had low expectations for inquiries, and then I've way exceeded them. So I think that might be something I tell folks, is that you really can take your pace at your own pace. There's so many tools out there that I have found fun to use. And I think they just have to ask themselves, are you still interested in learning something new? And I think we all are at some level of our brain, and we just have to tap back into that part.
You just hit on so many things that I love, from organizing files. I was the kid that went to work with my mom, and she washed boats, but I would go to the office, and I would think I was 7 or 8, and I would organize the files for the ladies in the office. And that was just the funnest thing for me.
My sisters
it's just so depressing when I say
I know,
it.
you think about it. My sisters and I played a game called Life. We didn't call it House, but we had families and children, and we went to the grocery store. We had this whole organized life, and I think, why do people think that men should be and only want to be entrepreneurs? Women are great at organizing and making sense of chaos, and that's what we need as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. We are better at making sense of chaos because it's served up so much to us by the men. Sorry, guys out there, but let's be honest here. Anyway, I agree so much that so much of running a business is problem solving and organizing chaos, and just learning and finding solutions. And who better to do that than academics, than scholars? Because we have that curiosity and that problem solving ability. And
yes,
I love also that you mentioned Maria Bayer, and I'll drop a link to her videos in the show notes too. But yeah, she really has a talent for making selling feel good, right? And I know that's another big hesitation that I think a lot of people feel about going into business, is that, oh, I'm going to have to be like a used car salesman or something. And that's really not it at all. It's, selling is just talking about who you are and what you do. And if you can talk about what you love to do, the work that you love to do, you are, in effect, selling those services in a completely authentic way, because the people who connect with you will be drawn to you, and they will want to work with you because they see that passion. So talk a little bit about, so obviously you're doing the editing and the coaching part-time because you have a full-time job. and it's summer, so I think you have a bit more time now. But talk about the kind of work that you've been doing and how some of these clients have been finding you.
Yeah, sure. And a side note, I would add, because this is a side hustle, I have noticed that the rejuvenated energy I'm getting from having that task to challenge me has fed back into my regular job. As a professor, I wrote a grant this summer. I haven't written a grant proposal in 3 years. So I feel like that's actually really good too. So the kinds of things that I've been doing, I started with agencies as you recommended. I felt, whether this is correct or not, that I already had a lot of word editing skills. I was very familiar with track changes and style. I think in computer science, maybe just having had so many more years, working in those tools. And I also have a pretty good eagle eye for typos and grammar things. I would always catch them reading my students' work. So I just thought, okay, I will be able to edit. That part isn't going to be the hard part. I don't know anything about getting hired or what else I need to know about editing. I will say that there's still nuances of editing that I think for certain kinds of clients, they're very important, especially agencies, because they're different disciplinary standards. So like this, for example, this just came up in the BAE Slack. We were talking about comma placement, right, in a particular sentence. And I think I was correct, or we were talking about the grammatically formal correct way to put the commas in, but it makes it clunky and hard to read. And the reality is, in a lot of even scholarly writing now, you see stuff like that relaxing. So I am no longer as concerned about that level of editing, and I'm focusing a lot more on coaching and developmental editing, which means reading for higher level comments, maybe even in the beginning stages of a paper, helping them craft a story, an outline that they then can expand. But that's a lot like what I already do with my students and their papers in my research lab. So I treat those coaching conversations almost as if they were a student that I was advising. It's just that my career doesn't depend on getting that publication anymore. And it helps me really focus just on their development. The other thing I would add about it is you were talking about selling. And I think those discovery calls where you first meet with your client, you might have a tendency, and I did think, oh, this is a selling call. I have to talk about what I'm doing. I found that the clients, yes, they want to hear that, but they also want a lot of reassurance that what they're seeking, is something that's doable, that they just want this thing to get published, get funded, get, out there. They want to know how you can help them do that. And I find that works best when I talk to them about what I think their goals are. Oh, it looks like you're trying to do this in this paper. Let's talk about that. And asking a lot of really pointed questions like I would for a PhD student I was advising. And I know those are sales calls because that discovery call turns into a contract, but it doesn't feel salesy at all. It just feels like a conversation. And that's what I really want your listeners to take away from that. So I've done some editing for agencies, theses, articles. I have done some work for private clients. I have had a few, and that's really where I'm focusing now. The editing agencies are great for experience. Like you said, my biggest frustrations with them are that you don't get to set the deadlines. That's already set for you. So if you wanted a specific working pace, you don't get to choose that. You either say, yes, I can make this deadline that you give me, or no, I can't at all. But with a client, I might be able to say, okay, well, what can we work with? And then, of course, the pay is not high. But not only that, I see that more and more of my expertise is being demanded as the editing landscape changes. And I don't think it's worth what the agencies are paying anymore, frankly. I think I have more skill than that rate shows. So that's another reason to go to private clients, to have that more control. And that's what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, let's dig into that agency question because I think that's important too. So, when I started out 5 or 6 years ago, so early 2020, of course, pre AI
Hmm.
becoming widely available, um, I started working with editing agencies like Scribendi and Charlesworth and some others. And it was reliable work. And I didn't have to do any marketing because I didn't
Hmm.
feel confident enough to, attract my own clients. No, I thought nobody would hire me, which of course was ridiculous. And it was a way to learn the trade, right? Of
Right.
how to, what exactly are you supposed to change? How many edits should you be making? How many comments
Right.
should you be leaving? All of that stuff. And it worked really well for me for a while. But I have, since I started becoming an academic editor in this program, I realized that AI is affecting editing not for private editors who are getting their own clients,
Hmm.
but for these agencies. And I think, like you said, one of the biggest challenges is that the people who write their papers with AI or who maybe their first language is not English and they're using AI to translate the papers or something like that, they're the ones who have a small budget, who don't have the ability to afford a private editor. And so they go to these agencies to try to get published because the system isn't fair and we require people to publish so widely in English. And this
Right.
is really their only option to try to get ahead in their own careers. And yet, like you said, the agencies are facing massive pressure to turn the documents around quickly,
Hmm.
to accept documents that are written very poorly, that are quite a mess with missing tables, missing figures, missing references,
Right.
stuff that you as an editor really cannot help with if the information just isn't there.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is. I agree that it is becoming more challenging. And that's something we've been trying to figure out in the program is how do we get you to learn these initial skills of, the professional editing without having to pay for an editing program, like an editing
Right.
certificate,
Right.
where you can also get paid, but where you're not taking the risk of, potentially doing a bad job or making those
Hmm.
normal mistakes that everybody makes with your initial clients. So it's a bit of a work in progress, I think. And
Right.
would you say that the experience has been worth it? Or looking back, do you think that you could have just dove right into getting private clients initially?
Well, you can always ask what might have been. I think in terms of confidence, doing some assignments with the agencies was a really good idea for me because it demystified this process in a fairly low stakes environment because ultimately if they didn't like my work and I wasn't retained, it was just a freelance contract, I could find another one. So I and they give feedback. Something people might not know about the early assignments you get in agencies is that you'll get some feedback from their quality assurance people on how to calibrate for what their clients are used to. And that was very helpful too, because it also gave me permission with all of the insights from you and the agencies, their policies, and the other members of the BAE community. It gave me a lot more confidence in where to stop editing. Like you were saying, how many comments to leave, how many changes to make, where do you draw the line? Nothing is going to be perfect. You still want to retain the author's voice. That's a common thing you hear. You don't rewrite everything. So being able to do that in a context where I was tightly constrained on time and I couldn't luxuriously just sit around and obsess about all the details like I might have done with a private client really helped for me get the training wheels. Those were the training wheels. And now I feel like taking on the private clients is me getting out there with the training wheels off.
Yeah, yeah, that's great to hear because that's what I'm going for, is for you to just learn the basics and get comfortable and see, oh, I really can do this.
Right.
And like just do the test run in the less than
Hmm.
ideal environment.
Right.
And then you're like, then you get clients start coming in because at the same time you've created your website and you're starting to post
Mm-hmm.
on social
Mm-hmm.
media and share it. And then they're starting to come in and you're like, okay, I've got this. I'm good, you
Right,
know?
right. You
And
can
so
see
how
that.
long you worked with the agencies for what, like 3 or 4 months at the most, maybe?
Technically, I'm still employed by both agencies. One of them was a book agency, though, and I never got anything from them, so I don't even know if that counts. The other one, I haven't gotten an assignment in a while. I'm looking at my calendar. So, and if I got one, I'd have to strongly think about it because I am building my private efforts, my efforts to market to private clients. So that is going to start taking more of my energy and hours, and it's going to have a higher return on investment. So I definitely expect that by the time semester begins, I won't have extra cycles for agency jobs. But that's a speculation based on my how things have been going and the buzz that I'm getting, and I think I'll be able to keep building that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I hope for is just, don't spend a year at one of these agencies,
Right,
right? You just get your feet
right,
wet and then you dive in with
right,
your own
right.
business. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that that clients have been trickling in and finding you. How do you, for the person who's out there who's going, how do I find clients? How do I get people to hire me? How are these people finding you?
Well, multiple avenues as usual. I would say so. The clients that I have actually worked with, and then the inquiries that I've received, some of them have been through, for example, you have a list of BAE editors from the community. So, in one case, for example, one of the clients I worked with said that a senior mentor of hers sent that page out. So maybe they saw it on your LinkedIn or something and they were spreading it around. Um, I've also been running cold email campaigns, which is like, but I am doing it, and you were right, and it's totally not scary. And I get cold emails all the time. I mean, in the amount of time that I'm sending these out, I probably have gotten, you know, do you want help with SEO on your website? Do you want lab equipment for your research? Those are the kinds of emails, and sometimes they are useful. So I feel better about that now. And
And have you gotten replies to the cold emails?
I have not gotten replies from the cold emails that I know of. I have a very high open rate, which I feel like is pretty good. And I also want to remind your podcast listeners that I really only started this in February. Like, I joined the cohort in January. By February, middle of it, I was hired by the agencies. And then I think you had us added to the lists by, I don't know, April or something. And so it was like a slow process, but it was consistently moving forward. So I expect that eventually I will get some cold email responses. Also through my network. And you had made a good point about LinkedIn. I had my career, my community, they focus a lot on Facebook as a networking tool because of our ages. I don't know exactly, but we have a group for meta discussion about the research community, and a lot of my Facebook friends are actually my research colleagues. But you can imagine that it's not a good place to get it's a very high noise. It's a low signal to noise ratio. So you can't get your signal boosted without a lot of ads. And LinkedIn was growing. It used to be sort of like a ghost town, but now it's, at least that I've seen, a lot more active, and that has helped a lot. And to me, that's more natural of a networking than Facebook, where I have to kind of think about everyone who's seeing this, whereas LinkedIn, it's very clear that this is my professional persona, and I don't have to translate things if, I'm worried about someone not knowing why I'm writing a grant proposal, for example. You know what I mean? And let me think, any other ways people have gotten to me. I did get on. So one of your big pieces of advice is to get on electronic theses and dissertation lists, which are lists of editors that universities will recommend to their students who might want help with formatting or finalizing their thesis. And I remember with one of those, at least, that person that I contacted asked for my flyer, and they did send it to all the grad students. So I think it's just about casting the wide net and finding people who are like, yeah, that looks like a good service. On the flip side, we hear stories about people saying, no, we have too many. So, it's not going to be everything is a win. And even in the BAE community, some people get hired by the agency, the next week someone else didn't get hired by that agency, or vice versa. So there's just a lot of activity, and I think remembering that we're all kind of in it together, is in the same boat, is helpful.
Yeah, and I think having a central place like our Slack community,
Right.
or when you're in the middle of a cohort, your weekly Zoom calls, reminds you that you have people who have been through the process that you're going through, which is why I love keeping the Slack channel open for everybody who's ever enrolled, because they can come back. Like, your questions don't stop after 12 weeks, right? Like, you could be 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road, and you want to come back and go, hey, I've never dealt with this before. What would you do? Yeah, but also I like the point that you made about casting the wide net, because I do think that's really important. If your business is going to be successful, you have to get as many eyeballs on it as you can. And that doesn't mean you have to dance on Instagram Reels or anything, but you have to find a few options that are comfortable for you, and keep trying them and keep trying them and keep putting the signal out there, and people will eventually respond to it.
Right. And
So,
I mean,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that I think, I know I'm on your podcast and I was in your cohort, but I think for someone like me who was really unsure, who wasn't ready to leave academia, and who wasn't, who wanted to not become isolated by working completely by myself, your community that you built has been instrumental. I don't think if I had not found your community, I don't think I would have been to this point now. I might be still spinning my wheels. I might be still, dragging my feet thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll do it next semester. And I am just so glad that I made the investment when I did, because it wasn't just monetary. It was in myself. It was in my brain. It was not letting my brain languish, right? And that has been amazing.
Oh, I love that. And you have grown so much. I mean, just in the last 6 or 7 months, I've seen such a change in your confidence, and and your energy and your excitement about the work. And
thank you.
Do you want to talk about your workshop that you're putting together, or?
Okay, yes, because then I will definitely have to do the marketing, and I am very excited about this. So yes, let's do it. I'll just give a brief overview of my plan. I am just about to open the waitlist for a NSF career coaching program. So the NSF Career Award, it's called the Faculty Early Career Development Award, and they just call it Career. It's, if your listeners don't know, it's probably the highest signal that departments look for. If you get this, then you're probably like you're 90% towards tenure. Other things matter, but this is a pretty big deal, especially if you're at an R1. It has about a 20% acceptance rate, which is better than the rest of NSF, but still not very high. And because it's so important, a lot of people are submitting, and you get 3 tries. So I love writing. Like I said, I love crafting a story, and I myself got a career award in 2015. And since then, through that process of me conceptualizing and strategizing that, I afterwards, did that with other colleagues of mine, junior colleagues who were interested in submitting, and they wanted to, I wanted to provide the expertise, and they needed to learn from someone who had done it. So I have, let's see how to phrase this. So I'm launching a program in spring. One of the main, let me start over on that sentence. So the career program's due in July. And when I submitted mine, I started it writing, I think, in January, but I had the ideas kind of hatching around in my head before. And I think that probably is earlier than a lot of people start. So what I wanted to do is create a cohort-based guided experience where we would every other week have a meeting to talk about different aspects of writing the career proposal. Things like what makes the career proposal unique? How do you budget for things? If it's a sole PI, how do you get collaborators? What kinds of logistical concerns you have to think about when planning your research? What do reviewers look for? And the goal will be to do these active learning workshops where people go and they apply it to their concept and then they come back. And the goal at the end of the workshop would be for them to have at least a fully fleshed out concept. They may need to continue to iterate on the text before the final deadline, but this would be a way for them to be part of a community working on this. Because a lot of times I think when you're in your department, you might be the only one writing that year. Or even in your community, sharing proposals amongst your peers it can be very fraught. So one thing I'm going to do, by the way, I didn't tell you this yet, but I'm going to release my career proposal with the wait list. So in my call for a wait list, I'm going to say, join the wait list, get my career proposal. Because, this is actually important as a resource to provide folks who may not have seen examples of these proposals because they're not published by the NSF or anything like that. So hopefully that kind of gives you an overview. This is my first time marketing something like this, so you'll tell me how I'm doing, I am sure.
I will help you through it. Yes. But I love, and you came up with this whole thing on your own, like you're now several months out of the cohort. I remember you posted just a few days ago in Slack the initial promotional content that you would use for marketing this and the details of the program. And I read it and I was like, whoa, she's got this. Like this is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank
you.
I
love that because when I have a new lead magnet that I'm sharing, it's called Map Your Academic Business, and those are the exact steps that I ask people to walk through in this workbook. Is think about the thing that you're good at, something in your academic job that you love doing, that you enjoy doing, right? For you, it's writing. Clearly, like I remember you said you won this grant on the first try, so clearly you're good at this. And you've been through the process, you understand it. You've also mentored other people who are doing it. And so take this thing that you're good at, that you love doing, and that yet is a problem for other people, right? That they don't know how to do it and they need help and they don't have access to very much help in their home departments. And figure out how you can monetize that, right? Because it's very nice of you to help these other people for free. But you, I presume, worked really hard to figure out how to be successful at this. And you are giving anyone who enrolls in this workshop not only the information that they need to succeed at writing the grant, but the community support of being with people who are going through the same process at about the same time.
Exactly.
So I love that. I love that we've sort of come full circle here where you have figured out this, and this isn't going to be your entire business. It's going to be an aspect of it where you can do things that you love. You're getting that community support that you were seeking inside academia, but wasn't available to you. And you're able to make extra money on the side, which you, as you mentioned, rejuvenates you, and the work rejuvenates you, and it filters back into your main job. So I am so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I think you're doing fantastic work, and I'm so grateful to have gotten to know you and to have you as part of our community and just see you grow because it's really exciting.
It's been great. I really am glad that I met you and all the other BAE community members too. It's exactly what I needed at a very important time a very important transition in my life. And I did just want to put one shout out there because, yeah, you said I came up with this all on my own, but I synthesize ideas from all different places. I have, like I said, done that career mentoring process with multiple people. They've said, "Hey, you should do this. You should go on the road," and then we're talking about marketing these types of services, seeing Maria's seminar, doing all of this work on projecting how my business could grow. It all fed into this concept. And yeah, I'm super proud of the concept and the marketing speak. And I'm like, oh, it's coming together. But I had to credit a lot of it from the support of the community. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not trying to reject the compliment. Thank you. But I also want to tell everyone who's listening that you can do it too, because you're going to have all the inputs. It's going to be that idea soup you need to come up with new, brilliant, efforts.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Well, before I start crying.
Oh, no.
No, out of joy. If people would like to work with you as an editor, as a coach, if they're curious about your workshop, how can they connect with you and find you?
Yeah, so my website is lisa-anthony.com because I don't like the two A's next to each other. And so it's a dash, even though it's kind of hard to remember for people. But it's there, and I come up if you Google search for my name, Lisa Anthony. And then that has all the information about my current editing services, and you can ask about developmental editing, or if you have other questions about conceptualizing your project, your paper. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, and that's a place, the website has blog posts, and I cross-post those to LinkedIn and engage with the community there. So that'd be a great place if you want to see some of my posts. You can check that out. And yeah, keep an eye out because pretty soon I'm going to be blasting this career workshop everywhere. And I hope to see a lot of you signed up for the waitlist.
Awesome. It's going to be fantastic. I know it's going to be a smashing success.
So thank you.
Early congratulations.
Yeah. No, well, we'll see. This time next year, if everything goes well, then it should be just wrapping up because the submission is in July at this time. So we shall see.
Awesome. That's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you too, Paulina. I appreciate it.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.